Okay, Algebra 2, this is the second part of the height data that we started to look at in the last video. You're probably going to want to have this sheet here handy, but the one that we're going to work with is this one called normal distributions, and this section is going to go with section 8.6. So the last section that we did, where we talk about the empirical rules. So it might also be helpful to have this empirical rule sheet out. So lots of things going on in this section. Hopefully your empirical rule sheet looks a little bit better than mine does. I've kind of written all over it, but hopefully you can kind of get the idea. Okay. So from this section, or from this normal distribution sheet, there are like 3 parts to it. So this is part 1, okay, that starts the average height of all students, okay? And then we go down and we talk about the average height of female students, okay? And that's going to be section 2, okay? And then section 3 is on the back side where it talks about the average height of male students, so section 3, okay? What I'm going to do with you is I'm going to do part 1 entirely with you, and we'll go through that. And then I'll have you do parts 2 and 3 on your own, okay? But you'll kind of get an idea. We're still basing our information off of the data that's listed in this sheet, okay? And if you remember from the last video, we went ahead and wrote down the average and the standard deviation. That's where it's going to come into play, or be really handy for this section, okay? So let's go ahead and take these numbers and write them into our other sheet. So we have, for part 1, we have the average height of all students, okay? So average height of all students, if I'm looking at that other sheet, all students in the survey was 66.4 inches with a standard deviation of 3.8 inches. Okay? And then we'll kind of deal with that on the bell curve here in just a second, okay? Number 2, we're talking about female students. So girls, 64.4 was the average for them. Okay, and then 2.6 was the standard deviation in inches. Okay, so the girl standard deviation was a lot lower than the other standard deviation, just because when you have a lower standard deviation, that means you're not varying a whole lot. So girls are pretty well, right consistent with one another. There's not a very wide range of heights for girls. There's a lot bigger range of heights for boys. Some boys are really short. Which would mostly be the 7th graders. I think we had some 7th graders that were really tiny in there. Yeah, and then we had some seniors that were like 7'2" or 6, not 7'2", 6'2". So a lot wider range for the boys. 68.4 was their average, and 3.7 was their standard deviation. So again, a higher standard deviation because it's a wider range of heights for the boys. Okay. So let's go over here and let's do, we'll fill in our bell curve and we'll answer the questions 1 through 4, and then I'll kind of explain to you how to do 2 and 3. So starting with 66.4, that's my average. That goes in the center here. Okay, so just like we did before, here is the center. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the standard deviation and add 3.8 3 times and subtract 3.8 3 times. Okay, so I'm going to calculate that here. 66.4. 66.4. And I'm adding 3.8. And that gives me 70.2. I add another 3.8. 74 inches exactly, and add 3.8. I could probably do some of this in my head. 77.8 inches. Okay? And then I'm going to go through and do the subtraction. So 66.4 minus 3.8 is 62.6 minus another 3.8 is 58.8, and minus 3.8 again, last one is 55 inches. Okay. All right, so now if you remember from section 5.6, we kind of write these in as the number of standard deviations that we've added. So 0 starts the center, and then it's like I've added 3.8 once, I've added it twice, I've added it 3 times. Okay, I've subtracted it once, I've subtracted it twice, I've subtracted it 3 times. Okay, so that's kind of how that boils down. Okay, Right, so what they're wanting us to do is find the range of all students that represent the middle 68%. Okay, so if we look at our empirical rule, okay, our empirical rule sheet, 68% is tells us that that's in between a -1 and a +1, right? That's one standard deviation on either side. So we're looking at -1 and +1, that being the range, okay? So -1 is 62.6 and a +1 is going to be 70.2 inches. So we can say that about 68% of the students at Blue Hill are going to be between the heights of 62.6 inches and 70.2 inches. About 68% of them. So the majority of students are going to have heights that fall in that area, okay? A lot of you guys probably do. And there's some of you that are probably taller than that, or some of you that are shorter than that. I'm just right under 62.6 inches. I'm like maybe 62 exactly. So I would not fall in the middle 68%. I would be on the shorter end of that, okay? But they're just saying 68% would live in between those two ranges for heights. Okay, maybe we should put inches on the end of each one of those. Okay, now the middle 95%. Okay, so 95% is within two standard deviations. Okay, so I'm looking at like -2 and +2. Okay, at those ranges. So 95% of my students are going to be within 58.8 inches and 74 inches. Okay, so I'm catching more of my kids, right? They're catching more of the students. There's only 5% that is either taller than 74 inches or shorter than 58.8 inches, okay? And there are a few people that are, you know, like little Luke Olson was 57.75 inches. He is below the 58.8 inches. Anybody above that? J.C. Himmelberg was 74.25. Yeah, so he would be just slightly above. So that's the 5% that's on either side of that, okay? Find the range of all students that represent the middle 99.7. So now we're doing 3 standard deviations, okay? Look on our empirical sheet, 99.7 is between -3 and +3. And those numbers are corresponding to 55 inches and 77.8 inches, okay? So they're not saying it's impossible to be outside of that range, but 99.7 is going to cover just about everybody. So you might have one like really freakishly tall person that's above 77.8. I don't think we have any, and I don't think we have anybody that's below 55 inches either. So basically all 100% of our kids are within that range according to the data that we have. But they're just saying there is a possibility that you could have somebody lower than 55 or above 77.8, but 99% of them, 99.7% are going to fall in that range. Okay, now, what is the z-score of your height compared to this data? Okay, so I'm going to do my height, you do your height, so don't use my same number. But when we're doing z-score, we do x minus x bar divided by the standard deviation. Okay, now x is going to be your height. Okay. X bar is the average, and the standard deviation is going to be what standard deviation is. Okay, so I'm going to take a little guess right here. I am 62 inches just about exactly. Okay, I'm 5'2". That's 62 inches. So you're going to have to convert your height to inches. Okay, so 62 inches. If I look at this on a bell curve, 62 inches is going to be just ever so slightly below -1. So I'm guessing that mine is going to be -1 point something, right? That's what my z-score will be, because I'm just a little bit below 1. Okay, -1 point something. So I'm going to convert mine. My x is 62, okay, minus the average is 66.4, and the standard deviation is 3.8. Okay, so I'm going to figure out what I am exactly. And my z-score, how far below? 62 minus 66.4 divided by 3.8. And that is -1.16. Okay, so I was right. I was -1.1 or -1 point something. Okay, if you are above 66 or you're taller than 66 inches, so taller than 5'6", then you are going to be a positive number because you'll be above this list. But this is my z-score. Okay. So what I'm going to have you do is number 2, and 3 are going to be really similar to that. So set up your bell curve, and then we're going to ask you questions. So this one, I ask you like the middle 95% for this one. Okay. Then they're saying the top 2.5%. Okay. So if we review top 2.5% on that empirical sheet, okay, the top 2.5% would be top 2.5% would be anybody above this mark right here, anybody above the +2. Okay. So you'll have to figure out what this +2 number is, and rather than a range, you will kind of have a range still, but it will be above a certain number, okay? And this will be like the +2 standard deviation number, okay? That's what you'll have to do for the top 2.5. So it won't be 2 numbers that you have in that one. In that case, you'll just have above whatever. The bottom 16% would be below a certain number. Okay, anybody that's below whatever number you have. Okay, now if you are a girl, you're going to answer number 8. If you're a boy, you're not going to answer number 8 because you're not going to compare yourself to the girls. So you get a freebie if you're a boy, but then girls get a freebie for number 12. So for boys only, girls you don't have to do number 12. Boys will compare theirs to this chart here. Okay, so what I'll have you do again is go ahead and fill in this sheet. And send that to me just like you did for yesterday's assignment. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm always online at about 1 o'clock from 1 to 2. So hop onto my Zoom conference or whatever it is, Google Meets, Google Hangouts. And I can answer any questions that you have, or if you're having trouble submitting, let me know that also. Okay, so fill this in. If you want to just send me the back side of this, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to send me the front. Okay.